Hey, Hefe, how you doing, buddy? It's Mookie.
Mookie, good morning. It's so great to hear your voice.
Oh, it makes every morning for you, no doubt. How you handling your raging ADHD? I'm just curious.
Well, I'm trying to sit on my hands rather than like banging things around the around my office and making a big mess and making lots of noise. And it's not always easy, but we take it day by day.
That sounds really complicated. I usually have some like Black Death coffee and a foot massage, and then I'm pretty much ready for anything.
I love a foot massage, Mookie.
Foot massage are what a start to any good day. It's a way of kind of sublimating all of our nervous energy. I think that's a good thing.
It's how we manage our neuro spicy, so as they say.
Neuro spicy is it. Hello and welcome to the Bald and Bodacious podcast. I am your host, Mookie Spitz, and I am with
It's Hefe Berkner. It's so really great to be here with you, Mookie. And I also invited somebody that I met at a party a couple of months ago. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Peanutbutter. At least that's what I go by in the scene. Yeah, I'm going to be talking about kink and neurodivergence or neurospiciness. Yeah, it's something that I'm pretty passionate about and would love to share what I found.
Sweet. We're excited to have you.
Yeah, welcome aboard, Peanut.
Peanut butter.
As I understand, peanut butter. That's right. Peanut's kind of cute, though. Does anyone ever call you Peanut?
You're actually the first.
All right. I'm proud to be the first, the free, the bold. Tell us a little bit about how you've channeled your own neurospiciness through the kink community, what you've learned and how it's benefited you and those you have come to know and love.
Yeah, so I grew up with autism and I pretty much didn't care about anything besides computers. I was pretty good at them. And people didn't really interest me too much. I kind of saw them as a block, like somebody who stands in between me and what I want. My sexuality bloomed pretty late, but when it did, like that is the first time like I like really started getting interested in making friends. Um, and it was pretty difficult because I never learned the social skills needed to make friends. But eventually, a few things helped me out. I was not really big on touch. My mom also wasn't really big on touch. And then one of my friends, he started bringing me into his friend group. He was an acro yoga teacher. And I was really bad at acro yoga starting off, but, kind of kept.
I've hung out with some folks that do acro yoga, but my suspicion is that not everyone who's listening has seen or experienced it. What the heck is that?
Yeah, it's acrobatic yoga. So basically, it's partner yoga. You do it with somebody else. And it's a very connective kind of yoga where it's not just about you being in your space. It's about how do you read other people, read their movements, and flow along with their movements. So it was a really great way for me to start learning nonverbal cues and how to interact with others.
So it started as a physical transformation. So just to summarize, you're self-identifying as ASD, autism spectrum disorder, and by its nature it's a spectrum, so there's a range. You didn't like other people, and people were kind of in the way for you of your goals, and it sounds like you were a coder, a computer programmer, and you were okay, but you're obviously missing that human connection, that human touch, and the first bridge for you was through this dynamic partnered yoga. Is that right?
Yep.
And then how did that segue into talking about kink with Mookie and Hefe?
Yeah. Well, when I moved to San Francisco, somebody sent me a link for a cuddle party, and I felt pretty awkward going there. I thought I would just be in the corner, nobody would want to cuddle me, and that just was not the case. I felt very safe and welcome at the cuddle party, and lots of people cuddled me. And that was sort of my gateway into this whole world. Then I started dating this girl. Um, Neither of us were into kink, but we were both like very explorative, and we had this quality of yes anding each other, and we just kept trying different things, and it was such a magical world together. Like once we were on a boat, and she said like, "Hey, wouldn't it be dumb if we just like streamed ourselves online?" And I was like, "Yeah, let's do it." And she was like, "No, no, 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 I was kidding." And I was like, "No, no, no, let's do it." And we got on Chatterbait. We started streaming ourselves, and basically we were like fucking online, and people were cheering us on and writing all these comments, and people on shore were also cheering us on. So it was sort of like this double exhibitionism, and it was like one of the coolest experiences that I've had.
All right, Chatterbait. So you're a tech guy. Can you tell us a little bit about Chatterbait? So it sounds like, you hook up with this woman, you guys have a good relationship, and then you guys become sexual exhibitionists through this app, right?
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. So usually you have like cam girls just like streaming themselves masturbating, but you could also do it with your partner. But still, like we saw that there was a pretty limited selection of what you can see. And in general, there's a pretty limited selection in porn, like on Pornhub. It's the same menu, like, oh, for 50 tokens, I'll give a blowjob. For, 400 tokens, I'll do anal. And it was all like kind of the same. And we love to experiment. We love doing role play. We did interactive games. And at one point, we had 4,000 people like in a room, like watching
No
us. And
way.
yeah, it was crazy. Like, yeah, it was.
That's amazing. So is it a little bit like OnlyFans? So by tokens, is there money involved here? How did this work?
Yeah, so generally, yes, they charge for various actions, but we didn't really want to bring money into it since, like, yeah, we wanted to keep our sexuality like fun.
That sounds fun.
This is fascinating to me because you start as an ASD kind of coding dude, right? And then it seems like before you know it, you are fucking your girlfriend on a live stream on Chatterbait.
Now, were you and the girlfriend actually in the same room together, or were you at different places were you streaming together?
No, I mean, like, we were playing together. Like, we were on a boat for our first live stream.
Oh,
Um, yeah, and yeah, then we just kind of like did it at home. But like, yeah, we would do like sexual stuff together, but also kinky stuff, role play stuff, all sorts of stuff.
that's
How,
awesome.
how did you set up the camera? Because now this is getting very, very interesting, even from a technical point of view, because you're an amateur couple pretty much on a whim. It sounds like you're like, hey, let's fuck online. And then did you set up a tripod by the bed? Did you edit any of this? Was it all live stream? How did you guys just go gonzo? Can you get into a little bit of detail because this is fascinating?
Yeah, so all of this was live. And I guess like yeah, at certain points, like if we had a tripod, we used the tripod. Otherwise, we just positioned it wherever. She is a photographer, so she knew the angles pretty well. But uh, yeah, I was also playing around with the streaming software, and we had like multiple angles sometimes. Yeah, it was really fun, like figuring all that out.
How long was a typical session that you guys did? Like, where and then how did it work? Did you make an announcement to your minions like Peanut Butter and his girl are going to be banging at 4 p.m. on Tuesday? How did this work?
No, we pretty much just went online, and when you go online, it sends out a notification to whoever follows you. And yeah, like it was pretty easy to get people.
And did you guys do this for a period of like weeks or months? How long did this go on?
Mm, that's a good question. We dated for 4 years on and off,
Wow.
and yeah, it depended. It kind of like rolled in and out.
And then you transitioned to some other stuff. You were telling me when we talked last time about a furry party.
Not quite. So how I got the name Peanut Butter, I was on a nude beach with my friends, and we saw like this flag with animal on it, and my friend is like, "Oh, that's a furry flag." So I went over, and it was a bunch of furries without the fursuit because it was 90 degrees. But yeah, they kind of introduced me to that world, and they said like, "Hey, first you need a fursona." And basically you build a persona that like represents what you want to be, and I think like that's how I see like furries. Basically, you have your life, but you also have like what you want to be. And for me, I picked Peanut Butter based off of Mr. Peanut Butter on BoJack Horseman, and basically it's a show about all these cynical people. And you have this one character who's this like really upbeat golden retriever, always having fun, always positive. And so I also have bipolar, and that's had an enormous effect on my life. So I spent most of my 20s in depression and suicidality, but Peanut Butter was my character of being happy and being active and being energetic, friendly, and eventually that sort of became me.
That's so cool.
What the hell is what the hell is the furry community? I mean, Hefe, do you want to provide a little bit more detail for our listeners who might not be onto the furry fet?
Oh, I'm sure that Peanut Butter has much more information than I do, having encountered a group on a nude beach without their fursuit. So please.
Yeah, absolutely. So basically, the idea of furries is you embody an animal. So you have like sort of a spirit animal. For me, it's a golden retriever because it represents a lot of these qualities that I want to take on, like that energetic, that happy, friendly. And generally speaking, eventually furries get a fursuit. I don't have mine yet. They're pretty expensive. You can also get just the head. It's still pretty expensive, but yeah, definitely my aspiration. And it could be sexual or it could be non-sexual. Um, and pretty much you just play with other furries, and it's a world of pretend. Like you just act as this animal and interact with others. I just saw on Reddit like a furry wedding. So two people got
Wow.
married in a fursuit, and then their whole community was also in fursuits. So, people get pretty into it.
That is awesome, and it's so in a sense, your furry is your avatar, like your spirit animal. It's your character. It's this embodiment of yourself, and it's not just sexual. It sounds like overtly sexual. You're not just fucking in a fursuit, but you could have a wedding. You could have a party. You could have a furry party, and you just kind of hang out in character. Is that right?
Exactly.
And then you've
And
also sort of explored other communities. I mean, you and I, as I said, we crossed paths at a sort of an open house potluck event that's associated with some folks that do like tantra and ecstatic dance. So there have been a whole bunch of different communities that you have started to explore, from California, where you started this, to New York, where I met you. Tell us a little bit about some of these other communities that you have poked around in.
Yeah. So, how did I go from autism where I couldn't really interact with someone? Definitely, during acro yoga, those first 2 years, nobody wanted to play with me because I was just not at all in tune with their bodies. Like whenever we played, like I was just so jagged. It was uncomfortable, probably painful to play with me. But eventually I started getting in tune with other people's bodies. Cuddle parties were really big for me. It was sort of this very low pressure environment. It's not sexual at all. It's explicitly not sexual, actually. And yeah, you kind of like get more comfort with touch. So I call like this umbrella the conscious touch community.
Mm.
And you start, with these like sort of platonic ways of experiencing touch. And then you can like sort of broaden your horizons. Like when I moved back to New York, I joined the Utopia community. And they kind of like ease you into more erotic stuff, or at least sensual stuff. You have your cuddle parties, but unlike the cuddless cuddle parties, I think they trademarked that name.
Mm.
Like, it's not necessarily like purely platonic. Like, you could still have like a bit of sensual energy.
Yeah.
Then they have latihans. Latihans, they basically blindfold you and you walk around and you can touch other people. You can dance with other people. And uh, yeah, you could wear no clothing, you could wear some clothing, and this like steps more into this sensual, borderline erotic
Yeah.
energy. And then they have liquid love, where you have this big tarp. They cover you in coconut oil, and you're all naked, you're all blindfolded, and you're just slithering on top of each other. And it's a really nice experience. And this is actually how I started getting more comfortable with guys. Like, I remember just kind of slithering around and feeling like, wow, this body feels really good. And then I'm like, oh, that's a dick. Um, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Like, I thought I was pretty straight, but that body felt good. So, am I missing out on something?
So I'm
That's
hearing
fast.
actually, Mookie, I'm hearing sort of two different stories here from Peanut Butter, and I want to ask about both of them, but I want to let you kind of dive into the one that is more interesting to you first. One story that I'm hearing is how exploring in these different communities with these different groups really helped you um, and I might not be using the right word here, but maybe helped you overcome some of the challenges or the difficulties of your neurodivergent or neurospicy baseline. That's one story. But I think another story that I'm hearing is ways in which this neurodivergence may actually have given you an edge and given you an insight and given you a way to be successful that other people might not bring to the party. Can you hear the two different questions and kind of talk a little bit about which of those resonates with you?
I think I kind of get what you're saying. So there is that autistic part where I just did not know how to interact with other people. And I discovered that, like, I don't really read a lot of verbal cues.
Mm-hmm.
So, people don't say what they mean, at least not in the neurotypical world. So I would misinterpret them, and they would be like, how are you not getting this, when they're only giving hints? But the body, it's a lot more expressive. Like, if I'm giving somebody a massage and they're all stiff, it's kind of hard to misinterpret that. So I actually started understanding these social cues through the body rather than through verbal settings.
So through the
Um,
body, I want to stick with that for a moment. Now, you talked about these events that you went to where you're touching other people and you're blindfolded. Um, Are you talking? Are you not talking? Are there also a set of physical cues that you bring to that conversation? How does that get communicated when you can't see the people around you?
yeah, so this is what I'm talking about, like sort of entering the community a little bit at a time, according to your comfort level. If you go to a cuddlist cuddle party, they have like a very rigid system, and they're very big on verbal consent. So, you have to ask before touching anyone. Like, can I touch your hand? Can I touch your forearm? Can I touch your head? You have to be very verbal every step of the way, and I think I needed that. Like, I needed that explicitness to get started.
Mm-hmm.
um and then if you go to something like liquid love, you can't talk, you can't see anyone, so you sort of have to start figuring out by touch. Is somebody open to this or not? And you kind of start seeing like, oh, like I kind of feel this rigidness, or I feel that this person is like kind of moving away from me. So maybe, they didn't want me to touch them, or at least not in this way. And believe it or not, like according to the organizers, there's very few incidents that happen. Like people catch on.
And then the other side of the question was, are there, or do you feel that there were aspects of your neurodivergence, your kind of different way of approaching and looking at and encountering the world? Are there aspects of that that you thought may have benefited you as you were exploring these things that, let's face it, are a little bit outside the mainstream of what most of us encounter on a day-to-day basis?
Absolutely. So actually, this turned out to be a really big asset for me. I didn't fit in. Like most neurotypical people, they just don't get me. They, get turned off by the way I am because I'm not like I am very direct.
They
Like
also don't
for
get naked and blindfolded and walk around a room with a bunch of other naked and blindfolded people. Let's be honest about that.
That's true. That's true. Like I was at my sister's birthday party, and I kind of dropped that I'm into kink, and they're like, "Ew," uh, and a lot of people like it. I think like most of my friends at this point are kinky. So it, yeah, it is not for everyone. At least they don't think it is.
So you're an alternative kind of guy from birth. You're neurospicy, as we like to say, and you have found that by entering alternative communities that give you some slack, that enable you to, in a sense, crawl, walk, engage in this kind of spectrumy way. There's a lot of overlap here. Spectrum behaviors are a range of behaviors, and as a spectrum person, you are entering a range of alternative explorations and possibilities in kink. And it sounds like you are welcomed every step of the way. You could go at your own pace, and as your comfort level increased and evolved, so did your surroundings. So the kink world, it sounds like, gave you outlet, gave you possibilities that you never had before in this more normie, neurotypical universe where you felt more alienated and less welcome.
So, yes and no. It actually gets more complicated, and I think this is the more interesting part of the story. You said that I felt welcome every step of the way. That actually was not true. Uh, so, and this is where the bipolar part comes in. So, bipolar, it's pretty serious. Um, a lot of my time was spent in catatonic depression where, I wasn't working. I was just laying in bed watching Netflix. Um, and then manic episodes, there were basically destroying my life when they happened. My first one, I ended up spending about $400,000 in a month. I had to file for bankruptcy. I lost all my friends, my relationships, uh, my.
How old were you at the time? Give us a little context in your chronology. When did you have this breakdown?
This was 24, and now I'm 32.
Okay, all right. So about 8 years ago, you had peaked in terms of this kind of disconnect with the world.
Yes, I mean this is where my bipolar started, and the way that I see bipolar is this disconnect, this cognitive dissonance that happens in your mind between what you want to be and what you are. And it's about depression is about pushing down all of those emotions that you have. And mania is about saying, fuck that, I'm going to do whatever I want, and it basically like swings to this other side of the spectrum, and then you burn out, you cause a lot of damage, and you get so scared by what happened that you retreat back into that safe shell of staying in bed where nothing bad can happen, nobody can hurt you, and eventually the cycle repeats as
And
like it
you
becomes
found a way to
unbearable.
break this cycle.
I've definitely found a way to make it better. The thing
Mhm.
is, you can't cure bipolar, but you can manage it. And
Right.
kink has been super, super helpful. And this is sort of where I would love to get more into, like how can kink be used for healing?
Awesome.
So you mentioned the disconnect though. So when I said, you were welcomed into this community, what's contrary to that? What kind of instances or situations presented themselves where you felt uncomfortable again, and how does this segue into some of your desires for continuing your journey?
So, just because you join the kink community, like the kink community, it is known for being open minded and good at prioritizing communication. It's known for being direct, but that doesn't mean that you'll be welcome and accepted no matter what you do. People will give you slack in terms of talking things out, but those emotions will still be there. And in fact, this brings out all of those insecurities. This brings out all of those emotions. The first play party that I went to, I was having a fight with my ex, and I said, so my ex was very attractive, and I had this insecurity that like I couldn't do any better, that this was just like sort of a fluke that
Mhm.
I got together with her, and I said, like, you know what? I'm gonna prove this wrong. I'm gonna go to this play party myself. This was supposed to be an experience between the two of us, where we would explore. But, I just went out like sort of with that attitude. And, of course, my biggest fears were that nobody would talk to me. I would just be in a corner alone. And I went there, I tried talking to people, they wouldn't talk to me. And my worst fears came true. Like all of these insecurities started coming up. And, it was a pretty traumatic day for me for many reasons. So that's the thing. Like, if you show up to a play party, people don't have to play with you. You will, like, I've probably gone to a few dozen play parties at this point, and still, whenever I walk in, I'm like, what if nobody talks to me? What if nobody wants to play with me? And this is almost never the case, but that insecurity is still there.
But you have found ways to move past that or to manage that. And as you're saying, more often than not, when you go, people do talk to you and do engage with you. Um, Talk a little bit about some of the strategies that you have used to help keep these feelings in check.
Well, one of the turning points in my life was going to acro tantra, which is a mix between acro yoga and tantra. And it's basically this container where we all agree to be very straightforward and, be honest about our desires, be honest about like what we want from somebody else, and be very clear with our yeses and nos and not attach like stories to them. So usually if you go up to somebody, like they will make an excuse of why they don't want to like interact with you.
I need to
Here,
wash my hair.
exactly, exactly. Um, but here, you're really encouraged to be honest. And there was something that one of the organizers went through. She went through a very vulnerable moment when I met her. And usually, like I sort of have beef with authority figures because they teach you what to do, but then they talk the talk, but they don't walk the walk themselves. This woman, she really did step into a position where she could have like retreated and stayed in this like facilitator role, but she kind of had to level with all the members there and like truly be vulnerable. And this is why I really trusted the space. And a lot of insecurities started coming up. Like I got rejected a lot, and at one point we had this workshop where everyone was like erotically dancing with each other but not touching. It was very
Mhm.
hot. And, earlier that day, this girl that I had like a pretty big crush on, she rejected me. And then my best friend there, like who I really looked up to, was like sexy dancing with her. And I just started crying. And, this is not something that I would do like 6 months ago. But basically, the facilitators, they encouraged you, like, if you feel an emotion, feel that emotion. If you need to cry, cry. And the policy there, like, if somebody is experiencing emotions, don't interrupt them, don't try to help them, like, let them experience what they need to experience. And that's what I did the entire time. Like, I was just in a corner crying, and I didn't feel anyone judged me for that. Like, I felt that it was okay to be, like, in this pain and discomfort.
So
And
it
this is
sounds like the strategy you're describing, and stop me if I'm getting this wrong. The strategy that you're describing is to actually authentically expressing your feelings rather than like hiding them and diminishing your presence.
exactly.
So you took this strategy and you've used it more or less and found it successful in some places, and somewhere along the way you turned a corner and you've actually started working on community building, that you're taking active steps to help others find community. Does that seem accurate?
Yes. And this is actually a really good example of how, I didn't feel welcome the entire way. Like, there were these big stumbling blocks and misunderstandings.
Mm-hmm.
So, I was very excited about this community. Like, finally, I found my people. And, I decided to start a sex positive house. And the idea was that we would have, like, all these events and parties. And, I recruited 3 other people into this house, including like somebody with a lot of experience. People did not take it the right way. They were like, they basically labeled me a predator.
Mm.
Who was I, like, coming in with no experience, no friends, like, just, yeah, like this new kid with nothing, like,
And what
Mhm.
what do you mean by a sex positive house? Can you provide just a little bit of context for our listeners? So, you're on your journey, and throughout all these trials and tribulations, you see it as net positive that you're engaging with people better, you're handling your emotions better than you did before, despite some of these hiccups. And then you want to take it to the next level. So, what do you mean by a sex positive house? How does that fit into things at this point?
Yeah, so basically the idea was, I wanted to live with people who, like me, were entering the scene or were already in the scene, shared the same values, and, wanted to create like more elaborate events together and play together and explore like all of these different things together, like cuddle parties, eventually play parties, like all of these things that ultimately helped me grow, and all these activities which I really enjoy.
At the same residence, you're all living together, or are you a community organizer at this point?
Yeah, so we were living together, and then we had a downstairs space where we could host.
Oh,
Okay,
that
great.
sounds so cool.
Great.
Yeah, but anyways, people really took it the wrong way. I built a pretty bad reputation, and when you build a pretty bad reputation, it's pretty hard to correct that. Um, and then people start interpreting all of your actions as uh, dangerous. Um,
Who
like
now?
I,
Who were the people that were resisting this? Your roommates in this sex positive home, or people who were visiting locally? Who got upset?
the community. So basically, the broader conscious kink community.
Okay, and you were connecting online, you were announcing events at your shared sex positive home, and things started to get off the rails. Is that right?
We didn't even have any events yet. Like, I basically just announced the home and like its idea.
Okay.
And so, but somewhere along the way, so most recently, one of the things that you and I have talked about is this app that you're developing. So you went from creating a space, a home where you were going to invite people for events and functions, and more currently, you're creating a digital home where people can find other events and functions. Tell me about the path from one to the next.
Right. So, yeah, it was a very scary time for me because, like, I felt I was about to lose this community, which, seemed so amazing. Like, it felt like this is my potential home. This is what I've been looking for. And ultimately, the way that I got through this was a few people did, see the potential in me. And, I really had to humble myself and realize, like, yes, what's happening is not fair. People are misinterpreting me. Like, I do not mean to do harm, but the fact of the matter is, the world is not fair. And instead of trying to change that, instead of trying to blame the community, you have to surrender. You have to surrender to what is and understand what the community standards are, what they're looking for. And this is not something that's as easy in the rest of the world. This is where I struggled with my autism, like understanding like those social cues of what you're supposed to do and what you're not supposed to do. And people just sort of mm, distance themselves from me, like in prior communities, versus here it was more explicit. And more importantly, there were these people who explained to me what was going on, what the point of view was of those people who, were labeling me as a predator, and ultimately helped me understand like this is what you do and this is what you don't do. It's not about what's right and wrong. It's about this is the way the community works. If you want to be part of the community, do these things and don't do those things.
So you got more radical candor from the kink community than you would otherwise get in a more conventional situation. So you felt that people were resisting you, some might have labeled you, but you were at least getting transparent information. People were talking to you and told you how things might not have been aligned with their own values and communication styles. Is that right?
Exactly. And that's what I needed as somebody with autism. Like, I needed somebody to directly tell me, what am I doing wrong here?
And then,
And what
and
was the
I really
next
want to
step for
follow
you?
that path because you've identified some of the challenges, but I think that after that, you've also moved into an area that we can celebrate a little bit more in terms of creating something that people find of value.
Absolutely. You're talking about Playbuddy?
Yeah, how did you get from, this space in the community where people are telling you that, hey, these activities, these responses, these things that you're doing are, let's call them not best practice. You went from that place to processing all of that into a new place where now you're doing things that people are finding value and finding appreciation for what you're doing.
Yes. So, after I understood where people were coming from, like, and where they were coming from is I'm not safe. I have no idea what I'm doing. If I host a party and somebody gets hurt, that's a huge liability. That like as somebody organizing a party, like you have to be very experienced and, very few like you need at least 5 years of experience in the scene before you do something like that.
It certainly
But
helps to have some insight into what could go wrong. And if you
mhm,
don't have experience, you're likely to lack that insight.
exactly. But um what I am qualified to do is build an app because that's what I've been doing for 14 years. And I built the app because, I wanted to know what events to go to. And I kind of had trouble, figuring this out. I had a few organizers that I knew about, but like trying to follow them on Eventbrite, it's pretty difficult. Like they just don't make it easy to say like what is going on today. So
Mm-hmm.
I started scraping Eventbrite and basically just made a calendar of this is what's going on today, this is what's going on this week. And it made it very easy for me. Like I used to be at a point where like I don't know where to go. I don't know what to do. Like I am so bored. I don't have any friends. I don't have any play partners. Um like like I did not have community at that point. And this app, it helped me build that community because at at this point there's probably like 5-10 events I can go to every day. um and that's great. You know, I
As a side note, I hope that you will send us a note when we finish talking with a link to where people can look at and explore and test this app to see how it works for them. Tell us a little bit more about what areas the app addresses. Is this like local? Is this international? Is this all kink? Is this cuddle parties? What do you touch in terms of region, and then what do you touch in terms of style and event type?
yeah, so I focus on conscious kink and conscious touch. So this includes tantra, it includes cuddle parties. It basically includes anything like leading up to this world. And, you know, it tries to follow like my journey where you don't just show up at a play party. You're going to have a bad time. But if you kind of go through these different steps, these different progressions, then yeah, you're going to eventually feel very comfortable at a play party.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to provide to other people like this path so they don't have to grow through all of these struggles. You know, when as an engineer, like we're big on open source software because you solve this difficult problem, and like why keep the solution to yourself? Why not publish the solution so that other people don't have to like go through all that work?
And can Mookie use this for his neighborhood in Southern California?
Yeah, so actually, I am currently building out the location feature. So that should be done in the next few weeks. In general, I am adding a lot to this app right now. So I'm getting into partnerships, I'm getting into retreats. So, for example, Everyday Tantra is one of my favorite international communities. They host retreats all over the world. And uh, we're starting to build these cross promotion partnerships where like my local community, Pagans Paradise, might shout out like, hey, there's a Cabo retreat coming up in May, and it links through the Playbuddy app, and then they get 20% off uh, by buying that retreat through the app. So basically
Mookie, you and me in
everyone.
Cabo, baby.
Yep,
Let's
yep.
do it, Hefe, through the Peanut Butter app. What's the name of the app again? Peanut Butter?
Playbuddy.
Playbuddy. It's so amazing and it's so emblematic of our age that ASD, Spectrumy people, Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, Mark Andreessen. The list goes on and on of these tech bros who are like yourself, spectrum people, used to be categorized as Asperger's, autism, what have you. And the characteristic of that is difficulty connecting with people, difficulty with interpersonal relationships, and yet thanks to their coding quirky super focused skills have developed the ultimate communication tools that all of society benefits from. And you seem to epitomize many of these characteristics where you're taking perceived weaknesses and flipping them around into amazing strengths to enable people to better connect with each other. There's a paradox and an irony to this, but there's a yummy peanut butter and jelly sandwich here too, which is you know, you're born with these problems, as it were, and the problems become opportunities and strengths. And here's the thing, if given the right circumstances, and what I'm hearing from you is, you were self-isolated for a long time, and it precipitated a lot of problems to the point even of a breakdown. And you discovered the alternative sexual community, as it were, as a way of breaking out. And along the way, you've discovered this kind of crawl, walk, run approach, which is you don't dive in swimming, but you go to a cuddle party where the pressure is off. You don't need to just dive in there exposed and be vulnerable. You could take things a step at a time, right? And I think that's a great takeaway. A lot of the normie culture, I would say, thinks that it's either 0 or 1. It's binary, where
Hmm.
you're either in a monogamous relationship and you're married for 20 years and you pump out a couple kids and that's it, or you're going to orgies every weekend.
Woohoo!
And what you represent is this middle ground of the spectrum where real things happen and everyone can pace themselves in terms of exploration, experimentation, and then along the way you're going to get speed bumps, you're going to get punched in the face, but you learn and you grow and you apply your skills even in a community like this, like you have with the Playbuddy app. This is very, very cool.
It's an excellent summary.
And what's the next step
For Playbuddy or
for
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 my life?
you for what in Peanut Butter's life?
Yesterday I hosted a party for my friends. I felt so happy. All of these different people getting along. I felt it was so easy to host. I could just do my own thing, like explore with all these people. I took like an hour nap. I have like energy management difficulties, but like I felt safe like in this community to, you know what? I need a nap right now. And the party went on. Like I feel that my life is starting to get pretty good. Like I have 4 play partners. My dating life is great. I still want a primary partner, but it's getting there. Um, and yeah, Playbuddy, like I think also has a lot of potential. The kink scene is growing like crazy. Like in the year that I've been in the kink scene, it's exploded. And I think this is a really good space to basically get into the marketing of kink events. And I have some background in Facebook marketing, and I want to see where that goes.
So I have one other question about the app and the events on the app, and this is something that you and I had talked about a little bit. There are a lot of people that are going into this with all of the best intentions,
Hmm.
and there are some that are going into this with good intentions but less knowledge, awareness, and experience, and then there are others that are going into this with potentially not the best of intentions. So there's a quality of how do we select which events are going to go into the app, and which of the events maybe we don't feel good about sharing this information with the world at large. How does that get figured?
So my view on this is a vetting process. There are sort of these feeder communities, like Pagan's Paradise is great for beginners. They're very well set up to handle all the issues that beginners might have. And basically, people just sort of get weeded out in these communities, or they end up getting to know like others in this community. And then you have vetted parties. So vetted parties, like you actually have to get vouched for by somebody else, and it's a way of ensuring that, like, if you are going to be in a space where a lot of trust is required, like say for example, I'm going to a CNC party, that
And
could
what does
get
that mean?
really.
Again, you and I know what that is, but let's articulate what is a CNC party.
So, you have like sort of your basic play, like you might do a little bit of impact or primal, but then you start getting into edge play where things get dangerous. So, CNC is consensual non consent, or basically rape fantasies. And it can get pretty intense. Like you could kidnap somebody, you could torture somebody. And you need obviously a lot of trust because not only is this a physical risk, but this is a psychological risk. You need to really know the other person and make sure that they're psychologically sound to handle different triggers. So obviously, like if you start getting people who just joined the scene into parties like this, then you're going to have a lot of incidents. You need to have, a very high bar to make sure that, these people are psychologically ready.
So peanut
And
butter,
and
I'm gonna
remember and
redirect.
remember their safe word.
Yeah,
Remember your safe word.
I'm going to redirect a little bit, peanut butter, because I really want to focus not so much on how do we select the people for the events, but how do you select the events that go on the app? How do you filter for this is a good app for the event versus this is one that I'm not going to put on the app?
Oh, absolutely. So basically, and I'm going to switch this, but everything from Eventbrite, I hand selected. So these are events that I've been to, these are organizers that I trust. I also import Plura's catalog. And I used to include all the events, but as we speak, like I'm changing it to the opposite, where I hand select the organizers I want, because my priority is having this as a high quality app instead of a quantity app. I
Mm-hmm.
want to make sure anybody who comes on there and picks an event, they're going to have a good time at the event. They know what they're getting into. Like, I'm going to do a little bit of machine learning as well to say, oh, this is a cuddle party. This is good for beginners. This is, something more towards edge play, like for example with blood play. You know, I think a lot of people would get freaked out if they show up to a blood play or event.
Or even an ordinary event that also allowed blood play, even if it wasn't the focus of the event.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's all
Exactly.
about
Yeah.
really
Exactly.
getting aligned and matching. And now we live in the age of AI. That's like the buzzword, but it's clearly the revolution that's transforming everybody's existence. And especially from a tech and coding point of view, it's about matching, just like Hefe's mentioning and you're reinforcing peanut butter. The role of these tech systems ultimately is to connect people in ways that are most personalized. Like we all have our needs and our predilections. And if you make information transparent as to what those needs are and you match it up seamlessly to this wealth of opportunities, especially in the alternative community, then you get aligned. So if you're just dipping your toes into the community, a cuddle party might be for you, just as you began your journey. Obviously no penetrative intercourse, but nothing that'll freak anyone out. You just kind of cuddle people, and that could go all the way up to this CNC kind of stuff where things get pretty wild. But again, it's consensual, it's based on trust, and most importantly, it's based on communication. So, how do you feel about the future of the alternative community from this kind of tech lens? And how do you see your own trajectory in terms of taking things to the next level for you based on what you've learned so far?
So I have a lot of thoughts on tech and kink and AI and kink. Um, So social media up until this point, it hasn't been very connective. It kind of has us just stay in online world. Versus Playbuddy, the idea is to get you out there. I purposely don't list virtual events because I want people to go out into the real world. That's how you're going to learn. That's how you're going to explore. And the way uh, I did some work with Facebook advertising in the past. It's an incredibly powerful system. It's crazy how much information they have on you. They had to lock it down, but I want to create something similar in Playbuddy with user consent, of course, where I understand the profile of who they are. And that's how I can push events to them that they will actually enjoy. Like, I'm not going to start pushing CNC parties, to somebody who just joined the scene. And there's quite a bit that I can do to understand where people are, to understand what each one of these events entail. And furthermore, like extend this out more into the Instagram, Facebook advertising space and basically get more people into this scene who are ready.
So you mentioned
And
Instagram. I'm wondering, are there places that people can follow you and your thought? Are you posting on Instagram or Facebook, TikTok? Are there profiles that people should be following to learn more about what you're doing and what you're working on?
haha, ironically, no. And, I was never a fan of social media. Like, I just kind of find it a little bit boring and it doesn't add too much to my life. So I don't have a presence myself, but that might change. I'm working with somebody who might build out like my Playbuddy Insta. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah, I,
But
I
you can
actually
always email
love
me.
I love that, peanut butter, because what you're hinting at is through your experiences, you were self-isolated for a long, long time. And the
Hmm.
entire benefit that you're garnering from the alternative community here is actual connection with actual people and actual exploration, not only of your sexuality, but of your skills and eagerness to be a connector and a communicator, and that happens in the real world. And I love how this flip has happened. And even the app that you're creating is meant to get people out there, not to get them back in there, which is where a lot of these trends are going. And what you talk about AI, and you talk about how you could better connect people through their personal preferences. Everyone talks about the end of the world through AI, but I've found that the greatest benefit is going to be transformative in all of our lives in all of these ways. Not only in the kink community, let's say, but in every aspect of our lives where by sharing information and preferences, it's not so much violative as it is an opportunity to just make your life better, right? It's just we have a chance to really connect with like-minded souls in like-minded ways. And we get through the bullshit of having to struggle through all these impediments that are more than anything else just a lack of information, right? That's where misunderstandings happen. And that is kind of the root of ASD. That's the root of a lot of neurodivergent disorders where there's a breakdown in communication. There isn't bad intent. A lot of
Mhm.
autistic people are dismissed as being mean and curt, but they're struggling to open up these levels and conduits of communication. And you're doing exactly that through your explorations in the space and the building of this app.
Yes, and actually, there's something that I want to clarify. People do have sort of this view on AI that it steals our information, it destroys our privacy, and it does. The way that it's implemented right now, it does. The way that Facebook works, that's what it does. But something that the world of kink taught me is consent. You could do all sorts of stuff. Like, basically CNC is a really great example. Raping someone, that is really, really bad. But doing the same thing with their consent could be really, really fun and powerful.
For both parties.
Exactly,
Absolutely.
exactly.
Absolutely. Right.
And this is what AI should be like. It shouldn't be like Facebook advertising forced down your throat to like sell you Timu nonsense. It should be, hey, you opt in, you explicitly say like, hey, I am on this path of trying to figure out like what are my interests? Where do I fit in? What is next for me? And then you are being served like that information is specifically being used for what you asked for.
100,000%. And that benefits everyone. It benefits the platform because they make everything more efficient. It benefits the advertisers because they're connecting with a sympathetic, eager audience. And it benefits the end user, which is I'm not getting a ton of shit and you're not just ripping off all my information, but you're providing value. It's like I want this stuff that you're presenting to me. And as I engage with it, you're learning more about me, not to violate me, but with my consent. To your great point, you are making my life better by connecting me with the things that I already want. And you're educating me about things that I didn't even know I want, but based on your knowledge of me, I'm like, yeah, right on. Bring it. And it's all about that transparency, and it's about the exploration. And here's why Hefe and I really created this podcast, which is it's not just about alternative sexuality being just interesting or just something people are talking about. But exactly as you've described it, Peanut, it is a conduit for self discovery, and it's an opportunity for people to not only express themselves in otherwise novel ways, but to learn more about themselves and to grow and to benefit from it as you have. You know, because your journey is astonishing from self isolation to CNC fuck party, right? And
Yep.
that says a lot about its potential. And lastly, no pain, no gain. Like the discomfort that you've shared, and we appreciate you sharing your vulnerability about all this stuff too. It's not just an easy ride. It's not just like I'm going to go to this sex party and fuck my brains out and everything's going to be great. It's about expressing yourself, taking risks, taking some of the heat, and then learning from this stuff to really get better at who you already are. And I think that nails really our mission on this podcast to talk to awesome people like you with the goal of opening people up and opening society up so we become less uptight, less afraid, and be all we fucking can be. And whether you're doing it by fucking or cuddling or furrying or whatever the fuck, that's the whole goddamn point.
So, Mookie, I'm
Yep.
so glad to be with you on this journey because I love your ability to sort of capture a broad set of thoughts, bring it together, summarize it. I'm wondering, Peanut Butter, if there were any other thoughts that we have neglected to ask about or that Mookie missed in his summary that you really hope people listening to this are going to either take away from the conversation or explore more completely.
I think this is probably a good time to round it up. I mean, obviously, I could talk about this for hours, but I think we hit a lot of topics.
I'm so grateful.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm so
Yeah.
grateful for you making time to talk with us. And I feel just so terrifically fortunate to have encountered you in person and really thought to have this greater conversation with you. I feel so terrifically lucky in a thousand ways. Mookie, what else? What do you got for us?
Yeah, any peanut butter, any kind of, advice you could give Jelly for a great sandwich, which is like for anyone listening, we've covered a ton of ground and they've gotten to know you and hopefully just admire you and feel such affection for you as Hefe and I have. But any advice for someone maybe like you who's like, holy shit, all I've ever known is to have a girlfriend or a boyfriend and all this kink freaky shit. I don't even know where to start. It freaks the hell out of me, but it sounds like this guy learned an awful lot and he came out of his shell. How do I make those first steps
Talk to
into
Peanut
this
Butter
kind
from
of
5
exploration?
years ago.
I mean, what I'm going to say is it's not easy. Like, don't expect it to be easy. You're going to go through a lot of emotions. You're going to want to give up. Like, a lot of stuff is not going to make sense. You're going to feel hurt. And that is the journey towards getting to where you want to go. Like, it is breaking down your ego. It is learning, like, even now, I encounter these situations where I really fuck up and, it's scary. But, you, uh, one book that I really recommend is Existential Kink. It definitely changed the way that I think about kink as well as life in general. And it sort of shows you that, like, pain is inevitable, but you can choose to include that pain in your life. Like, the reason why BDSM works is because you are choosing that pain instead of it happening to you. So, the way that I changed my life was to consciously welcome that pain and say, like, hey, I want this so that I can grow, so that this pain is not happening to me.
I think you nailed it in terms of the essential theme. I mean, I was bloviating there for like 30 seconds, but you nailed it, which is choice. if nothing else, having the choice to become someone different, to do different things, and to explore is the greatest gift that we can offer ourselves. And the alternative sexual community, kink, what have you, gives you the choice to make that leap, to make those baby steps, and to just become a different and better person. And that's the feely good kind of furry kind of feeling that I love having right now.
Mhm.
I love feeling your furry back, Mookie, but I think I'm ready to wrap this up and go on with the rest of my weekend. I'm certainly grateful to you both for making time for this today, and looking forward to sharing this story with the world at large.
Yeah, I just want to warn you that if you do that kind of shit, there's going to be a lot of static electricity. So it's worse than walking on a fucking carpet.
All right, my friends, thank you both so very, very much.
Yeah. Thanks much, Peanut Butter. And as Hefe mentioned, we're gonna share links in the description with we could put your app link if you're comfortable with that. You mentioned the existential kink book. We can put
Pagan's
the link
Paradise.
of that. Yeah, and any other links and info, we're gonna share them. Thanks so much, Peanut Butter. I keep calling you Peanut.
All good.
Thank you so much, and keep us posted, and maybe we can check in with you in 6 months, a year, see how the app is doing, and see how your journey is faring in this wild and crazy kink, etc. world.
Awesome. Love to you
Absolutely.
both. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much, folks.